Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Baruch, the first chapter. And, as we know, Baruch was the scribe of Jeremiah, right? So we know that they were contemporaries. So, as we go through Baruch, it goes into, of course, at this time, the siege of Jerusalem, right, by the Babylonians, and so on and so forth. Okay, now in terms of, the setting, right, here, where was Baruch at this time? Different sources say different things. Some will say he was in Babylon, some will say he wasn't, so on and so forth. But I believe in the book of Jeremiah, the 43rd chapter, around the 6th and 7th verses, it tells you that Baruch ended up going with Jeremiah to Egypt, right? As they were, I guess, maybe against their will, right? Sent there, with the other Israelites. Nevertheless, here in the book of Baruch, it mentions here Baruch being in Babylon, right? So, we'll go with what the scriptures say, but as we go through this chapter, the focus is mainly on right, what's the message in here? Because when it comes to these, details about secular history, there's some that there's abundant information on, and you can get it there, but there's some that, you'll dig and dig and dig, but at most you'll find approximations, you'll find, guesstimations based on one scholar versus another, and so on. So, it doesn't really help to get caught up in the nitty-gritty details of everything. However, having some understanding of, okay, who was Baruch, around what time was he, what was happening to Israel as a nation at this time, will give you more context and a better understanding as you read the verses in the book, right? They start to make more sense. So this is the book of Baruch, chapter 1, verse 1, and these are the words of the book, which Baruch, the son of Neriah, the son of Maasaiah, the son of Zedekiah, the son of Asadiah, the son of Kelkias, wrote in Babylon. In the 5th year, and in the 7th day of the month, what time as the Chaldeans, which the Chaldeans are talking about the Babylonians, took Jerusalem and burnt it with fire. And Baruch did read the words of this book in the hearing of Jeconiah, the son of Joachim, which when you read it in the, in the book of Jeremiah is referred to as Jehoiakim, right? That wicked king, king of Judah, and in the ears of all the people that came to hear the book. So when you look at this guy, Jeconiah, right? He was carried captive to Babylon, right? And let's actually go there real quick. So this is why it says here that in Babylon is where Baruch was reading, right, this book in the ears of Jeconiah and so on, because at this point Jeconiah was already sent captive over there to Babylon. Okay, so let's actually get let me see, I think we can go to 2 Kings chapter 24. Should be around, let's see, the 10th verse. There you go. So you see the deportation to Babylon. All right. And at that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it. And Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and his princes and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. And he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold, which Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord Yahweh had said. And then it goes on, but now let's jump down to verse 15. And he carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty of the land, those carried he into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. Now, how Baruch ended up here, whether he went along and he was able to return back or whatever the case is. The scriptures don't say right in detail, but we do know, like I mentioned, pursuant to Jeremiah 43 and 7, right? It mentions here, actually, I think it might have been 46. Let's see, Jeremiah 46 and 7. Okay, maybe I'm tripping. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up this here. Okay, it is 43. 43. Yeah, Jeremiah 43 and 6. Even men and women and children and the king's daughters, and every person that Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, had left with Gedaliah, because they didn't take every Israelite captive to Jerusalem. The son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, and Jeremiah the prophet, and Baruch the son of Neriah, right, which is the same Baruch here, which, as we're reading in the first verse, right, which Baruch the son of Neriah, Greek, or other version, alternative way of saying Neriah. So they came into the land of Egypt, for they obeyed not the voice of the Lord Yahweh. Thus came they even to Tahpanhes. So you had some Israelites, right, that came to ask Jeremiah whether they should go into Egypt. Jeremiah asked the Lord said no. They said, we don't care, we're going anyway. And then they took Jeremiah and Baruch and them with them, right? So, like I said, the order, as we're reading here, Baruch is in Babylon reading this book, but then he ends up going to Egypt with Jeremiah. Like I said, he could have gone there, been able to return back, who knows? But that's not the focal point of this lesson, at least. So we dealt with Jeconiah, right? This is why he is mentioned here, because he was one of the captives in Babylon, taken there by Nebuchadnezzar. It says here, Jeconiah, the son of Jehoiakim, Joachim, king of Judah, and in all the ears of the people that came to hear the book, and in the hearing of the nobles and of the king's sons, and in the hearing of the elders and of all the people, from the lowest unto the highest, even of all them that dwelt at Babylon by the river Sud. Right, so when we were taken exiled out of the land and taken captive to Babylon, just as we were captives in Egypt, we dwelt in Goshen, right? So in Babylon, there were certain areas where, like today you have the ghettos. Babylon, there were certain areas where the captives of Israel dwelt. Verse 5, whereupon they wept, fasted, and prayed before the Lord. They made also a collection of money according to every man's power. And they sent it to Jerusalem unto Joachim the high priest, the son of Kelkias, son of Salom, and to the priests and to all the people which were found with him at Jerusalem. At the same time, when he received the vessels of the house of the Lord that were carried out of the temple, to return them into the land of Judah, the 10th day of the month Sivan, namely silver vessels which Zedekiah the son of Josiah, king of Judah, had made. So these were different vessels than the ones that we were officially allowed to take back with us by the decree of Cyrus, and then Darius and so on, right, later on Artaxerxes. Verse 9, after that Nebuchadnezzar, which is Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away Jeconiah, and the princes, and the captives, and the mighty men, and the people of the land from Jerusalem, and brought them onto Babylon. And that's what we read of in 2 Kings. And they said, behold, we have sent you money to buy you burnt offerings, and sin offerings, and incense, and prepare ye manna, and offer upon the altar of the Lord our God, and pray for the life of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Now, what we can do here is, actually, I'm curious. Let's look up Baruch 1 and 10. And see, sometimes they have different translations here. Okay, so let's take a look here. Right, so as I suspected, right? So in the other translation, they have it here in the 10th verse. the people wrote, "Please use the money we are sending you to buy animals for the burnt offerings and sin offerings, to buy incense, and to provide the grain offerings. Offer them on the altar of the Lord our God." And so, as it says, "Prepare ye manna," right? That's going, as the other translation has it here, into the grain, right? And it would make sense that this would have to be some form of one classification of the kind of offerings that we would be able to offer to the Lord. Now, what's interesting here as well is, if it's a little somewhat ambiguous, right? Because by requesting that these offerings, these sacrifices be made upon the altar, right, of the Lord our God, and then at the same time, we know that when the Babylonians came and besieged Jerusalem, and they burnt, right, they burnt the temple, they destroyed everything, and we had to rebuild the altar, we had to rebuild the temple and all those things. So then this might be an indicator here that this probably took place possibly when Jeconiah and some of the people of the land were taken captives, but prior to the full destruction of Jerusalem, right? Because when Jeconiah was taken captive, Jerusalem wasn't destroyed at that very time, right? You had Zedekiah, which came up into power, and when he rebelled is when Nebuchadnezzar came up in there and did what he did. So you had Israelites that were taken captive as exiles, right? I believe there were about 2 exiles or so prior to the Babylonians actually coming in with full force and destroying everything. And hence Daniel being one of those that was taken in the first round. And then you also had Ezekiel that was taken. So verse 11, it says, "And pray for the life of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and for the life of Balthazar his son, that their days may be upon earth as the days of heaven." Which this is, Balthazar would have to be the translation of Belshazzar, right? Which Belshazzar, when you actually look into it, was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, right? But just as we know in the scriptures, sometimes it mentions son and sometimes it mentions father. And when you actually look into that word, for example, even Abba in the Hebrew, it could be referring to like your grandfather, right? Or your great grandfather. So even though it says father, it doesn't necessarily have to mean your direct, father, one step above you. For example, you'll read some scriptures that will say he slept with his fathers. Well, we know that even though it's not prefixed forefathers, it would have to be referring to your forefathers because you have only one physical father, right? So when it says somebody slept with their fathers, what it means is their, forefathers or ancestors. So here it says his son, but in this case, it's really his grandson. And it says here, "And the Lord will give us strength and lighten our eyes, and we shall live under the shadow of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and under the shadow of Balthazar his son, and we shall serve them many days and find favor in their sight." So in this case, under the shadow meaning under their reign, under their rule, because they were the one of the main dominant superpowers at this time, right? Being the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Now, something else that's interesting about this here is when we read about Jeconiah, right? We read about how he was released from prison by evil Merodach, as is written in the scriptures. Now, his secular name is Amel Marduk. And here we're reading about the same Jeconiah that is here amongst the captives, right? So, you'd have to, it's not exactly clear, when exactly this is happening, right? Is this a post, him being released from prison? Is it maybe when he was taken to Babylon, he maybe was not sent to prison right away, right? Something happened and then Nebuchadnezzar imprisoned him. Whatever the case is, these are all those missing details, right? But those are not necessary for you to understand or get the more important message of what the chapter is saying here. Because overall, on a high level, this historical account is really letting us know what what befell the nation of Israel primarily the southern kingdom, as a result of disobedience, which is going to go into as we keep on going into the latter verses, right? And so it's a key for us to learn not to disobey the Lord and to look at the examples of the past and see what the Lord did and how, it affected us, that we may learn and reflect and know how to serve the Lord in this time, right? Basically learning from the mistakes of the past. Verse 13, pray for us also that the Lord our God, or unto the Lord our God, for we have sinned against the Lord our God, and unto this day the fury of the Lord and his wrath is not turned from us. See, and that's why they were in captivity. And ye shall read this book which we have sent unto you, to make confession in the house of the Lord upon the feasts and solemn days. And ye shall say, to the Lord our God belongeth righteousness, but unto us the confusion of faces. And in this case, the confusion of faces meaning, like shame, right? It says, as it is come to pass this day unto them of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Because it was a shameful and a very low point in our history to be taken captives here, to be brought down to this low state, right? As to where at one point we were like the glory, the untouchable nation in the east. Verse 16, and to our kings and to our princes and to our priests and to our prophets and to our fathers, for we have sinned before the Lord and disobeyed him, and have not hearkened unto the voice of the Lord our God. And that was by way of the Lord's prophets, right? So the prophets preceding, right, leading up to this point, one example being Jeremiah prophesying and warning our people of the judgment to come if you don't stop this wickedness, the idolatry, the murder, the adultery, the wickedness in this land. If you don't stop, the Lord is going to bring judgment and he's going to take you out of the land. Well, they didn't stop. Okay, and now this is what happened. So rightly so, as they're saying here, we have not hearkened unto the voice of our Lord. We were disobedient to walk in the commandments that he gave us openly. And this goes back to the covenant we made with the Lord, right? The agreement to follow his ways, his laws, statutes, and commandments. But once we got in the land, we didn't follow, we didn't adhere to that contract. And as a result, the Lord brought judgment upon us. Since the day that the Lord brought our forefathers out of the land of Egypt on to this present day. So since that day until now, Israel had been, as it says, we have been disobedient unto the Lord our God. We have been negligent in not hearing his voice. And I believe it's in the book of Ezekiel that it's mentioned there that Jerusalem, right, Judah and Israel were likened unto sisters. And it was mentioned how Judah saw the iniquity of the northern kingdom and still went and did worse. So having witnessed what the Lord did to the northern kingdom by the hand of the Assyrians, Israel still continued to do wickedness, and then the southern kingdom got their part too. Verse 20, wherefore the evils cleaved unto us, and the curse which the Lord appointed by Moses his servant at the time that he brought our fathers out of the land of Egypt, to give us a land that floweth with milk and honey, like as it is to see this day, and that land being the land of Israel. So that curse, which goes back to Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, the curses that Moses, made us very aware of, that what the Lord would bring upon us if we disobeyed him, which went into being besieged, eating your children in the siege, right? That happened. That's in Deuteronomy, I think 28 and around the 40th-ish on down verses. It talks about how the women, right, the woman that was delicate, her eyes shall be evil, and it talks about them eating their children and not sharing. Guess what? They did these things, right? That was mentioned in the book of Lamentation. The siege, right, that is mentioned in Deuteronomy 28 as part of the curses that happened during this time. That happened when the Assyrians came against the northern kingdom. That happened later on when the Romans came against Jerusalem in 70 AD. So it was a curse, like a recurring thing. And this is one example of that, as our people are reflecting on it during this time. Verse 21, nevertheless, we have not hearkened unto the voice of our Lord, or of the Lord our God, according to all the words of the prophets whom he sent unto us. A precept for that is 2 Chronicles 36:16. But every man followed the imagination of his own wicked heart, to serve strange gods and to do evil in the sight of the Lord our God, just as they do today. So pretty much, instead of following what the Lord commanded us to do, everybody wanted to do what they felt was right, what they wanted to do, following their own mind, serving whatever God they want to serve, eating whatever they want to eat, committing whatever sins they want to commit, and not fearing the Most High, not adhering or even worrying about the consequence that would bring. And boom, it led to this. So anyway, that brings us to the end of Baruch, the first chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.